right. There are not only new and better models of existing products to stimulate demand, there is not only need for replacement goods, but there is a truly ingenious capacity for a responsive society to adapt to a new economic circumstances. As noted, the builders say they will promote the idea of vacation homes. What about the slowing down of customer growth in fast food chain due to a falling demographics? What to do? Start serving breakfasts or put the food fast food restaurant on wheels and take it to a construction site to serve such workers are or put fast food restaurants on wheels and take it to the construction site to serve such workers as are still working in that field, or get a franchise working in a college student union building. Wondrous are the ways of the free marketeers as they seek new markets. Do not underestimate them. On the other hand, remember that some demand is finite, very finite. Thus, people typically eat only one breakfast per day. If they eat an egg McMuffin at McDonald's, that is an egg that was an egg not eaten at home. From the chicken's farmer's point of view, and the chicken feed producer and the producer of egg boxes, it makes little difference whether the egg was sold to McDonald's or whether it was sold directly to the consumer or to a supermarket chain which then sells it to the consumer. It's still one egg. In short, a responsive business community can surely help in dealing with the economic effects of the birth dearth, but responsivity is not a panacea. And here is something else that is not a panacea: exports. When one travels around Western Europe these days and discusses the economic dilemma of their birth dearth, one hears a strange solution advanced. Quote, "It doesn't matter that our domestic market will shrink. We'll solve that with extra exports to the still fast-growing third world." Such a notion is as foolhardy in Europe as it would be in the US. In fact, it is doubly so, because European fertility rates have fallen lower than ours, and it has little immigration to help out. Again, that's really weird, hearing that immigration is just used for like just initially work, and then now they're just being used like thinking they're gonna stay in the country, but then they're just used as like a pawn to produce or impregnate the demographic they want, presumably. I don't know how they assume it's gonna work out that way. Yeah. That proposed solution is no solution. Who in the third world will buy European or American exports if there is not much of a market in Europe or America to sell to? Where will the dollars, France, guilders, lyre, dosh makers, and pounds come from to buy European goods if Europeans, due to low population, can't buy very much, thereby sending those hard currencies overseas? Indeed, as we shall see later, one of the great losers from the birth dearth will be the less developed countries, for as the late Herman Kahn pointed out, I paraphrase, "The best thing going for poor people is rich people." Wow, okay. It is, after all, rich people who can buy the products and services of poor people, making them progressively less poor. When the United States buys Sri Lankan textiles, the Sri Lankan workers involved earn less than a U.S. worker would earn, but are better off than those Sri Lankans would be otherwise. How so? Because they get jobs, usually well-paying ones by local standards, and not only that, soon the demand for their services may be bid, creating a cycle of somewhat higher wages. Now, this may be like based on a cold logic of truth overall, but I think bringing people into a certain civilization, you get a trade-off of like you get gold put in your hand while your feet are like burning, at the same time or something. Alrighty then. But if the first world market diminishes while the third world labor force grows, the third world will not be nearly as well. Who will buy their goods? On a global scale, fewer rich people makes it more difficult for poor people to become rich people. Here is another European panacea one hears. We have lots of unemployment now. We don't have enough jobs for the workers we have. If we have fewer workers in the years to come, we have less unemployment. Harumph, as my colleagues at the American Enterprise Institute, Herbert Stein, points out. Quote, that is an interesting theory. If one has no population at all, that would eliminate all unemployment, and all employment too. Truth be told, the unemployment rate within a given nation is relative and proportional, not absolute. The point is elemental. A nation with 10% unemployment would likely have about 10% unemployment, regardless of fewer numbers of people. After all, the fewer people from sparser birth cohorts would consume less than for cohorts who would. That would lower demand, lowering the number of jobs. Thus, when the German population falls, the amount of wurst consumed will fall. That leads to fewer jobs for wurst makers, and the unemployment rate would remain about the same, and that is not the worst case scenario. He makes a pun there, by the way. The only jobs that might be considered locked in under such conditions of population decline would theoretically be from exported sources. But that, as we have seen, also doesn't work. Remember, when imports drop due to birther shortage of consumers, then exports will fall due to the shortage of hard currency to pay for the exports. Finally, in yet another sense, there are no finite numbers of jobs in a given nation, created by a mystical job market machine, usually called, quote, a government. There are only societies that are organized that increase or decrease the amount of unemployment. For example, one reason rich countries have unemployment is, in part, because, in brackets, often humanely, sometimes wisely, they subsidize it with programs like unemployment insurance, welfare, minimum wage, and medical care. Okay. If such programs were eliminated, unemployment might well plummet as desperately poor people, previously protected by the social safety net, sought and found very low wage jobs or sold apples on street corners, or begged for a living in order not to starve. It would not be a country I would choose to live in, but I might have a lower unemployment rate. In any event, employment does not rise and fall on the basis of Neanderthal notion that there are only a finite number of jobs to be filled by a finite number of people. People not only consume and create goods and services, they correspondingly also create and consume jobs. That is the essence of supply-side demography, and that part of the theory is surely correct. And finally, there is another argument that is a non-starter. I talk in this chapter primarily... That scared the crap out of me. And finally, there is another argument that is a non-starter. I talk in this chapter primarily about the economic effect of turbulence and dislocations caused by shrinking demand and an ever overpopulation. This harms an economy while it shifts gears to accommodate to new reality. Well, I am told a free economy always has dislocations and turbulence. Don't worry, the buggy whip makers were dislocated out of business by the automobile manufacturers. The people who worked for the typewriter manufacturers were dislocated by the people who made word processors. The textile workers in America were dislocated by textile workers in Taiwan, but we all ended up in the right, didn't we? Stop worrying. No. There is a crucial difference between a worker being temporarily put out of work because the product he or she makes is superseded by a better product, or because people in another country can make certain goods either cheaper or better. In those instances, even an individual losing a job may suffer. In those instances, even if an individual loses a job may suffer, the public as a whole gains from better or less expensive products. While automobiles, we can move ourselves more efficiently. With personal computers, we can make a spreadsheet more quickly. With lower cost imports, we can buy a dress at a cheaper price. But what are the economic benefits from the worker dislocated out of the job because there are not enough people to buy the house he used to build? There are none. That worker may indeed find another job as the economy grinds and shifts, but his dislocation has caused no economic betterment and hopefully only temporary suffering.